Imagine walking into a store, say back in 1910, just for a simple roll of toilet paper. 13 different sizes to choose from.
It's incredible, right?
Talk about overwhelming.
It's a total blast from the past, and it's what we're diving into today.
Today, we're looking at how America went from obsessed with product variety to practically swearing off choices.
It's fascinating how something as, well, I guess you could say as basic as toilet paper, can be a window into this huge shift.
Right.
In how Americans thought about, well, buying things.
Exactly. So before we get into wartime rationing and all that,
Because, yes, that's coming.
we've got to understand what life was like for shoppers back in, say, the early 1900s.
It was a different world.
Different house, though.
I think more is always more.
More is more.
Colleen Dunlavy, in her book Small, Medium, Large,
Great book.
really paints a picture of this time, before World War I.
So what was the driving force behind this love of, well, I guess just tons of options?
Businesses were convinced that to beat the competition, you had to cater to, well, practically every whim a customer had.
So it's like the customer is always right, but like on steroids.
Exactly. Dunlavy calls it, and this is a great term, the tyranny of the consumer.
Tyranny of the consumer.
Businesses felt almost, well, obligated
Obligated to
offer every single variation of a product.
So give me an example.
Need a file, be ready to choose from over 1,300 different types.
You're kidding? 1,300 different files?
Horse chains. Try not to get overwhelmed. There were 504 varieties of those.
Okay, it's hard to even wrap your head around.
It really is, especially nowadays, right?
It makes choosing between brands of toothpaste seem easy.
Right. And it wasn't just about giving choices for the sake of it.
What else was going on?
It gets at something deeper about what it meant to be a consumer in those times.
In early 20th century America?
Exactly.
But then World War I hits.
Throws a massive wrench in the system.
Suddenly, it's not about more. It's about
efficiency.
And making do with less.
Conserving resources becomes absolutely vital.
So how did the government handle this sudden need for streamlined production?
It's really interesting, actually.
Okay, tell me more.
It wasn't just, hey, you can't buy this anymore.
Yeah.
They took a more, well...
collaborative.
Yeah, a collaborative approach.
So working with businesses to simplify things?
Exactly. Remember those 1,351 files?
Oh, yeah. No hardware store needs that many files.
Wartime efforts whittled that number down
To
a mere 41.
From over 1,000 to 41. That's,
Drastic.
it's not just simplification. That's a complete manufacturing do-over.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, right?
Did it stick around after the war? Did America go all in on this whole mass production thing?
Initially, there was a lot of enthusiasm.
Oh, so people were into it.
Yeah, figures like Arch Wilkinson Shaw,
Who was a big deal and what was it?
wartime conservation,
Right.
saw this simplified approach as, well, the next step.
Keep that efficiency train rolling.
Exactly.
What happened?
Old habits die hard, it seems.
Meaning
Businesses always wanting to please, to have that edge.
they slipped back into their old ways.
It's hard to resist the pull of new and improved,
So it was back to more stuff, more problems.
Not quite. This is where a familiar name pops up. Herbert Hoover.
Hoover. Wait, as in like President Hoover. I never knew he was into streamlining production.
Not present just yet.
Okay.
This was Hoover as Commerce Secretary, but already passionate about, well,
Efficiency.
efficiency, standardization, the whole 9 yards.
So he picks up where wartime efforts left off.
In a way, but he was also aware of the legal landscape.
What do you mean?
Directly telling businesses to simplify, that could be a problem. Antitrust laws and all that.
Makes sense.
So he goes a different route.
Which is?
He works through the Division of Simplified Practice,
The what now?
the DSP.
Okay, let's unpack that. What was the DSP and how did it let Hoover dodge those legal issues?
Think of it like this.
Like what?
A neutral zone, a space where businesses could come together, look at the data and say, hey, maybe this whole simplification thing isn't so bad.
So not a government mandate.
More like a
nudge in the right direction.
Exactly. And the DSP, it gave businesses that platform, that incentive to cooperate.
It's really clever when you think about it.
It is, isn't it?
Instead of it being do this or else, it's, hey, this is actually good for you.
And that made a world of difference.
So how did they convince businesses to play ball? Was it just about the bottom line, or was there more to it?
It was a fascinating mix, really data-driven arguments appealing to their sense of, patriotism even.
For the good of America, streamlined your production.
Exactly.
So it wasn't just do this, but do this. Good for business, good for America. Did it work, though? Did businesses really buy in?
By the 1930s, simplification, well, it was everywhere.
Everywhere. How much are we talking?
We're talking a whopping 2/3 reduction on average in the number of different products companies offered.
2/3? That's wild. And this wasn't like the government twisting their arm.
No, businesses were choosing this, realizing it made sense.
What sorts of things saw the biggest changes? What really got streamlined?
Well, those paving bricks we talked about.
Yeah.
From 66 varieties down to just 5.
Wow. Imagine the stress that saved somebody somewhere.
And then there's hotel chinaware.
Yeah.
Get this. They went from a mind-blowing 700 varieties
700?
down to 160. Think about trying to keep track of inventory with 700 kinds of plates.
No thanks. So I get why businesses were on board, but were there any industries that were like, no way, not happening?
Oh, there were definitely some holdouts. Women's fashion, for one.
Fashion's all about, well, being different.
Exactly. New trends, the latest styles. Limiting choices just doesn't fly.
But even fashion had to make some concessions during the war, right?
Right. Remember the slim silhouette thing to save fabric?
Yeah, for the war effort. Okay, so businesses are on board, at least some of them. But what about the average consumer? Were people happy about having fewer choices?
It's tricky. To be honest, the sources we have, they don't give a clear-cut answer.
How so?
On the one hand, this simplified approach, it was sold as a win for the consumer. Lower prices, better quality.
Makes sense. Fewer products to focus on. You can really perfect them.
That was the idea. But, and this is a big but,
What's the catch?
this was also a time of incredible progress, technologically speaking. New inventions, rising incomes. People got used to, well, having options. Imagine buying your first car or refrigerator.
Yeah.
You want some say in the matter, right? Not just take it or leave it.
I'd want some choices, for sure. I get it. It's like they say, variety is the spice of life.
Exactly. So you've got this tension, efficiency versus, well, the desire for something new, something different.
So did that tension ever boil over?
That's where things get really interesting. Late 1920s, it seems like simplification is here to stay. And then, bam, the Great Depression hits.
Oh, wow, yeah. The Depression. Talk about a curveball.
Businesses are suddenly desperate. Every sale counts.
So that pull to offer more options to try and stand out, it must have been huge.
Absolutely. It was the ultimate test for Hoover's vision. Could this commitment to streamlining production last?
Or would it all go out the window in the face of economic turmoil?
It's a question worth thinking about, and it's important to remember the context. Even before the Depression, a lot of this drive for new products, new varieties, it stemmed from competition.
Businesses trying to one-up each other.
Exactly. The Depression may have just amplified that.
So this idea of simplifying, of standardizing, it's more complicated than it seems.
It really is. It gets at the heart of what consumers want, what businesses want to produce, and how all of that gets shaped by forces larger than ourselves.
It really makes you wonder, right? Like, are we really in control of our choices these days? Or is it all, I don't know, kind of an echo of that same struggle from back then?
Between too many choices and, well, not enough.
Exactly. I mean, we're bombarded with options now more than ever.
Yeah.
It's kind of overwhelming when you stop and think about it.
It really is. It makes you appreciate how these historical trends,
Like this whole standardization thing.
they're still shaping our world today.
Totally. It's like, I never thought about standardized sizes as being, I don't know, interesting before.
Right. But there's a whole story there.
It's like a secret code or something hidden in plain sight.
The secret code of efficiency.
Okay, I like that. So we've got wartime necessity, then Hoover's DSP kind of nudging businesses along.
Yeah.
What really tipped the scales? Why are standardized sizes so universal now?
Momentum played a big part, I think. Once these recommendations from the DSP, once they took hold, it created this kind of self-perpetuating cycle. Imagine you're a manufacturer back then, right?
Okay, I'm a manufacturer.
Your competitors are all using these standard sizes.
Makes sense. Got to keep up.
Your suppliers are already set up to produce things in those sizes, and retailers, well, they're stocking their shelves accordingly.
So it's like, why fight it?
Exactly. It just becomes the easiest, most efficient way to do business.
Right, like a snowball effect.
And once consumers get used to those standard sizes, well, it gets even harder to go against the grain.
It's true. I never buy batteries hoping they're a slightly different size.
Exactly. And speaking of standards, didn't Dunlavy also talk about, what was it, commercial standards?
Oh, yeah. It wasn't just about size, was it?
No, it was about making sure products actually worked the way they were supposed to.
So, like, My toilet paper. It's not just got to fit on the holder,
It's got
function properly.
Exactly. It broadened the whole idea of standardization.
So it went beyond just like bricks and bed sheets and all that.
Oh, absolutely. We're talking mop sticks, thermometers, bank checks, construction materials, the whole 9 yards.
Wow, so everything started getting standardized.
Not everything, but it's amazing how far-reaching those standards became.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just stuff we buy every day.
You're talking industrial products, the behind-the-scenes stuff?
Yeah, exactly. It really laid the groundwork for modern manufacturing and commerce.
It's funny, you just never think about this stuff. Like,
No.
we just assume a light bulb will fit in the socket.
Or that a 2x4 piece of lumber will actually be, 2 inches by 4 inches.
Right. We take it for granted, but behind all that consistency, there's this whole history.
Of collaboration, of figuring out how to make things work better.
And yes, sometimes a little government nudging to get things moving.
Exactly. It really highlights the power of working together, of finding common ground, even when it comes to something as seemingly simple as the size of a brick or a light bulb.
Well, I'll never look at a standardized anything the same way again. It's like I don't know, a hidden language of efficiency woven into our everyday lives.
It is, isn't it? A reminder that even the most mundane parts of our world have these fascinating stories to tell.
It's true, and it makes you think, what other hidden histories are out there? What else are we taking for granted?
That's the beauty of it, right? There's always more to discover, more to question.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into, well, the surprisingly fascinating world of standardization.
It's been my pleasure, really.
And for you listening, keep your eyes peeled for those standardized products and take a moment to appreciate the history behind them.
And who knows, maybe you'll uncover a hidden history or two of your own.
That's all for this episode of The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.